Hey, welcome in Stinkin Truth Podcast alongside Mike Evans. I am Mark Schlereth. Thank you guys so much for being part of the show. We appreciate you. Make sure you like us, send us a comment, tell us what you want to talk about, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Whatever it is that you do, do that. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm probably going to be looking at my phone a lot throughout the course of this just to see if there's any more breaking news that we have to respond to.
I love how free agency doesn't actually start till Wednesday, but it started on Monday because there's a tampering thing. And all the contracts are agreed to. They just haven't been signed yet. And so at what time did free agency really start? Because all of a sudden, whenever the opportunity to sign guys or to announce deals on Monday, whatever time it was, like Monday at 10 o'clock, and then all of a sudden this whole slew of deals gets announced. Like, did they just start working on it at 9:59?
Right.
Like, it's such a bunch of baloney.
Yeah,
they've been working. So this had to go back to last week, right?
Easily. So the
real tampering period, you already broke. You opened up the tampering period because you needed a tampering period because teams kept doing things illegally. So you opened up the tampering period, and then what? There's basically a new tampering period that's not talked about, right? Because I don't know how it works.
It doesn't matter. It's beautiful, though. It
is.
It's beautiful chaos is what it is. But before we even had free agency, we had the big trade with the Bears trading that number one pick. Carolina moves up, and the Bears get a haul. They really do. And if you are somebody that believes in Justin Fields, then, man, the Bears are set up to make a meteoric jump, aren't they?
Well, I mean, on paper, and I always say this, if the games were played on paper, I would have spent a lot less time on an operating table. So on paper, the Bears win. And good for the Bears because I think Justin Fields is interesting. First and foremost, you cannot argue his athleticism. He's a freak show, right? And then you look at that coaching staff and finding a way to put him in a position to accentuate his strengths and mitigate some of his weaknesses. I did a game early in the season between the Bears and the Bears in Minnesota. And Minnesota came back in the last drive and won that game, but the Bears actually played pretty well, and Fields played pretty well. And studying Fields early in the season, the first 4 games of the season or so, before I called that game, I think it was like week 5, I described him on the broadcast this way. It's like my golf game, right? I will shank 4 or 5 drives and think, what the hell is going on? I'm awful. And then I pipe one 325 right down the center. Beautiful. I mean, just as gorgeous. And I'm like, yeah, I figured it out. And that was Justin Fields early in the season. It would be 3 or 4 just god-awful throws. Like, you're like, oh, dude, this guy is not a quarterback. And then all of a sudden, he would just, might throw a dime piece that was unbelievable. And he had that capability. And then I did a game of him later in the season. It was like with 5 games left in the season against the Green Bay Packers at home in Chicago. And watching that film leading up to that, watching what they had done as an offense and his progression, he had gotten so much better. And now all of a sudden you add in a legit number 1 receiver, which Chicago never seems to have. A legit number 1 receiver in DJ Moore. And let me tell you, for people who don't know DJ Moore, because you don't pay attention because it's the Carolina Panthers, nobody pays attention to them. And no offense to Carolina. I feel like the obligatory no offense, but let me offend you. Nobody cares about Carolina. Like, they just don't.
Oh, that's not insulting at all.
No. But, I mean, they don't. Even when they were winning a lot and had Cam Newton, it still wasn't something that drove the marketplace. We know what drives the marketplace. Hey, you can hate the Dallas Cowboys all you want. You either love them or you hate them, but they drive ratings. And so there's a reason they're always one of the top-rated teams in football. When you put them on Sunday, people just flock to the television sets. Same with the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, those teams. Carolina's not one of those teams. But DJ Moore quietly puts up 1,200 yards a season every year with, average offense and average quarterback play. So they got a legit big-time number 1. Mooney, the other kid, is a really good receiver. And they got the kid from Pittsburgh last year. Chase Claypool.
Good tight ends.
They've got some tight ends. Now they've got to fix their offensive line. And I always believe you don't build a team from the outside in. You build it from the inside out. And that remains to be seen because you know this as well as I do. If you can't protect your quarterback, I don't care how good your receivers are.
Still, for Fields, it comes down to this, and he wouldn't be the first quarterback. Plenty of quarterbacks who came into the league as running quarterbacks had to prove that they could become able to just win from the pocket, dominate from the pocket. I mean, you can go back as far as Steve Young, Cam Newton. We talk about him. Russell Wilson had to do that. Jalen Hurts just did it. Lamar Jackson. Let's not kid ourselves. The reason why he's not getting the contract that he wants is because the Ravens have serious doubts about his ability to become that kind of quarterback. So are you confident that Fields will become a quarterback that can win consistently from the pocket?
See,
because that's what it all comes down to.
I think, but does it?
I think it still does. I think it still does.
So you don't think teams are willing to trade this meteoric kind of 7 to 8 year run at the quarterback position like they've done at other positions and go, okay, we'll give him his second contract, but we're not giving him his third contract. And we're saying, let's run him into the ground, and then when injuries start to happen, as they will, then we'll move on.
Is the goal to ultimately win a Super Bowl?
That's the goal.
Show me the running quarterbacks.
Well, you don't. At this particular point in time, you don't have one.
You can't.
Yeah. You don't. And like, again, it depends on what you're looking at from a franchise standpoint, because let's face it, the amalgamation, it's a big word, people, amalgamation. The amalgamation of this collegiate style of RPO offense with what is traditional in the National Football League is here to stay.
Yeah.
And the quarterbacks that are being developed in the college game are no longer like, how many schools are playing a real kind of pro style, like drop back offense. They're just not doing that. So I would tell you that the odds are is those are the quarterbacks you're going to get. So they're going to be more and more of those guys that become prominent in the National Football League, and eventually you're going to get that kind of run / RPO / drop back / mixture quarterback, that collegiate style of quarterback that is going to come in and eventually will win championships. It seems that's the trajectory. So the bottom line is, it's the old saying, I've seen a lot of good young running quarterbacks. I've never seen a good old running quarterback. Like, you just have to start to realize that, all right, if we're going to run this style of offense, what's the shelf life of our quarterback? Where, we've just witnessed Ben Roethlisberger, and we've witnessed, Tom Brady, and we've witnessed Drew Brees playing in their 40s, and all these quarterbacks that are playing, Phillip Rivers just mentioned that he'd like to come back. That's what happens when you have 9 kids and you go home for a year. You're like, oh, gee.
I got to get out of the house.
Right.
But I do agree with this, and I will meet you halfway. I do think you are going to see more and more teams sort of shelve the idea of, hey, we got to find our guy for the next 15 years. That'll be more along the lines of, all right, let's see if we can find a quarterback that is really athletic, can run, can make plays, is exciting. Maybe along the way we can really convert him into a really good pocket passer. And if we only have him because of the short shelf life of the style he plays for 6-7 years, 6-7 years is an eternity in today's NFL. So maybe that's the trade-off that teams will make.
Yeah, I think that you look at the way teams just kind of look at windows, right? Okay, we draft him as a rookie, we play him, we get him up to speed. All of a sudden, year 3, we expect him to be able to kind of do both, right? Very much like Jalen Hurts, who was great running quarterback, but also developed into a really good passing quarterback this year. And they put a lot of weapons. They've got the best offensive line in football, so they took a lot of pressure off of that guy. And they still have another year. I guess this will be because he was a second rounder, so this will be his 4th year, correct? So, they're going to have to sign him to a long-term deal, or they're going to have to make a decision on him. But again, that's your second contract, right? And now you still have that window to win a championship, and then you got to figure out what's next. So, but you still can do that this year as well if you don't sign him to a long-term deal.
What's next for Jimmy Garoppolo? His journey continues. He's reunited with Josh McDaniels with the Raiders. on the surface, it seems like a really good marriage.
Yeah. Again, not to offend Giant fans. All right. And I know Jimmy Garoppolo's had some injury issues. But really, Jimmy Garoppolo at what did he sign? Like $23 million a year? Or Daniel Jones at $40 million a year?
Well, Jones can run, though. Jones a mobile. He can beat you with his legs, too.
Ain't no question.
But he threw 15 touchdown passes last year.
Yeah. And plus, you got Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, supermodel. Daniel Jones, not supermodel. So
right.
I did send.
You got to share that story.
Jimmy
share that
Garoppolo
story.
a
This
text.
is a true story, folks.
I just sent him a text. I don't know that I'll hear back from Jimmy because Jimmy is not great on his cell phone. But here's my text to Jimmy Garoppolo. Hey, congrats on signing in Vegas. If you'd like to make some extra cash dancing, I know the folks at Thunder Down Under. He hasn't responded.
Not yet.
No.
Not because he won't. I'm sure if he sees it, he'll respond.
Like,
but
no. He'll see it and he'll laugh because he knows I'm an idiot. And he'll laugh. And then he'll just like, okay, moving on. He's Jimmy Garoppolo. Not a care in the world.
But Jimmy, he's the big tease. He's the ultimate tease because when he's healthy, his team wins.
Dude, he's like, in his career, he's like 40-17 or something. I mean, something crazy.
But he gets hurt a lot.
He does get hurt a lot.
So how do you handle that trade-off?
Well, I mean, obviously, you've got Josh Jacobs, right? So you're trying to protect the guy. You're trying to run the football. You're trying to keep him out of harm's way. You're trying to give him opportunities in the play-action game and all the things that they do under Josh McDaniels. And Josh McDaniels, let's face it, like you can say whatever you want as Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but as an offensive guy, I mean, Josh McDaniels is legit. And, I mean, Brady was able to stay healthy all those years. Jimmy just seems snake bit. It's always something. It was ACL, it's a foot injury, it's this, it's that, it's the other. But, boy, I tell you what, the guy can flat spin it. He can play. He just finds ways to win. And then you look at them offensively with the weapons they have. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Devontae Adams' skills. That guy's as good as it gets in this league. Waller at the tight end position, Renfro at the slot receiver position. Like, they have got some talent. Now, offensive line-wise, are there question marks there? But again, by the time you run the ball and you do all those things, like you take a lot of pressure off your quarterback in those situations. So I love the move of Jimmy Garoppolo going to the Raiders.
How do you feel about free agency? We make a big deal of free agency and the teams that win free agency. As we're talking right now, the Broncos have already won free agency with the moves they made. But ultimately, is that the way you want to go about trying to fix your football team, especially if you are trying to win right now and Sean Payton strikes us as a win now type of coach? You got really a year to try to fix Russell Wilson, so they're in a win now mode.
I think one of the big things or big issues that you get into is, how do you build a football team? How do you construct a football team? And most people would tell you you've got to do it through the draft, right? You've got to have enough draft capital to make draft picks, to have guys pan out. And the biggest deal about the draft is salary certainty. When you draft guys and they're on rookie contracts, you don't have to pay them. For the guys that drafted after the first round, it's a 4-year contract. And guys that drafted in the first round get the 5th-year option, right? But the bottom line is it gives you some salary structure and salary certainty. Now, when you've given away all your draft picks because Sean Payton required a first-round pick to get him, and then Russell Wilson a couple first-round picks, when you've given all that away, then you got to go to patching holes, and that's just a different tool in your tool belt to go out and get free agency or go out and get free agents. You have to know what you're getting. There's a reason they become free agents, right? Because the contract that they're going to get a contract that's probably bigger than the one the team that they play for is willing to give them because you overpay in free agency. So most of the time when you win free agency, again, It's like we said with the Chicago Bears, right? You win free agency. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're winning in the regular season. But I love the approach the Broncos took in that they're building their team from the inside out. They said, hey, man, our offensive line has not been good enough. They have not had a right tackle probably in a decade that has panned out. And they've gone through a bunch of Stevenson, Menelik Watson.
Juwan James.
They went through right tackle after right tackle after right tackle, Billy Turner. None of them, zero, have panned out. So they went out and got themselves Mike McGlinchey. Mike McGlinchey's a damn good player. Now, has he struggled in pass protection in certain situations? He's a big, tall land giant. He's about 6'8", 6'9". He gets a little high at times. He has excellent technique. He's been coached exceptionally well from his Notre Dame days into his San Francisco days. But, he'll get a little high in the hips, and he'll give up pressures, and he'll give up a few sacks every now and again. But the guy plays exceptionally hard. He runs hard. He's a good run blocker. Like, he's a really good player. And then they got Ben Powers as well, another guy that's a line of scrimmage dude that will take on that line of scrimmage. And I think one of the things you have to understand, when you have a 5'10" quarterback, the one thing you do, and you live in a 3-step and 5-step drop environment in today's NFL, is simply because the routes are quick, it's underneath throws, it's move the ball, it's, quote unquote, this is bullshit, but extension of the running game. I get the concept, but it's not real. Extension of the running game. You don't wear anybody out throwing a swing pass, right? You don't. Okay, but I digress because it irritates me. But that's the world we live in. So when you live in that world and your quarterback ain't 6'4", what ends up happening is if he's taking a 5-step drop and that 5-step drop, the first read in that 5-step drop is not there, what do? You hitch up. Right, because that's the timing of the route. And if you've ever listened to anybody coach the West Coast offense, they'll talk about throwing the ball with your feet. So each hitch is the next read in your progression. And the routes time up to the hitches. So the first read in your progression, if it's a 5-step drop, is bump, 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 right? And then you're triggered, boom, let go of the ball. That one's covered, then it's da-da, you hitch up, the next route. So whatever that is. So if you're running curl flat, right? If you're running curl flat, it's da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Flat's covered, da-da, hitch up, boom, throw the curl. If you're running curl burst, which is a flat with a curl, and then the running back out in a burst, right? Then it's da-da-da-da-da-da. The flat's covered, da-da. The curl's covered, da-da, boom. Well, you're climbing the pocket, right? You're hitching up in the pocket. And when you hitch up in the pocket, if your offensive line, especially guard, center guard, is giving up ground, if you're 5'10", you know what you can't see? You're like this. This is the offensive line. You're like this, peeking over, and you lose all that underneath stuff. You lose those guys. You can't see them anymore. So now you got to scramble around. So if you can get a guy, and I always talk about this with teams that I consult with, I think my number one priority when it comes to pass protection is take the passive out of pass protection. So I want to give you tools to attack the line of scrimmage to make sure that we stop it right there. So when you hitch up, I haven't given up a bunch of ground. I've taken the fight on the line of scrimmage. So when you hitch up, you can still see, especially if you're a 5'10" quarterback like Russell Wilson. And so that's where that becomes very important.
Wilson is one of the more captivating, compelling figures for this upcoming season because he was so shockingly bad last year that it's a great debate to have. Is this a guy who literally fell off the cliff and is done? Or is this a guy that can easily be salvaged by Sean Payton and do these moves help him do it?
Right. There's what we're going to figure out, right? Are you more concerned about being a celebrity quarterback or a quarterback? Are you more concerned about, putting up numbers or winning games? Because I've had multiple meetings and multiple opportunities to talk to Russell Wilson, who's told me point blank, I want to be the winningest quarterback in NFL history. Well, then you need to get rid of the people that pollute your mind with let Russ cook, and you need to get into what does Russ do well and what helps our football team win. Like the whole mantra of let Russ cook. When you really break it down, it's basically as selfish as anything out there. And you think about not, hey, let our team win, or let's do what is required to be great, and let's do what's required to accentuate everybody on our offense and on our defense. Is to let Russ cook, meaning, hey, we just want that dude to be the star.
Well, is it that, or it's just giving him more responsibility? Nobody has a problem in Kansas City with letting Patrick Mahomes cook or letting Josh Allen cook.
Because those guys can.
Well, you would think, based on the 9-10 years that Russell Wilson had in Seattle and the numbers he put up in the winning that they had, that maybe there was a thought that he could do more, like those other quarterbacks.
From his camp, yes.
Yes.
Not from the camp that coached him.
And they ended up being right. But you can maybe understand, can't you, why Russ maybe thought that he could do all those things. Now, he certainly learned the hard way this past year, but at least you could think why he thought he could do all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be...
I was throwing 40 touchdown passes a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that would be your coaching staff. Like, I know the coaching staff would basically tell him, no, we don't, this is not what we do, or this is not what you do. And he's saying, no, but I could do that. Like, I want to do that. And they're saying, based upon the film that you've put out there and based upon what we know about you we don't think you can. Regardless, the bottom line is for Russ is the Broncos are building their football team. And this just goes to show you where the Broncos sit right now. The Broncos, if Russ doesn't work out, they'll move on from Russ. They just spent $200 million. They spent $130 million cash yesterday, their first day of free agency. Mm-hmm. This is either you play the style with which we're going to coach you to play and you be successful, or we're moving on. And this is not like they got a 35. This is not like they went out and signed Jason Peters at 41 to play left tackle for a year, right? This is 26 years old, 28 years old, 25 years old. These are guys that are starting to enter their prime of their careers that they signed 3-4 year deals to. This is basically saying, hey, Russ, we need to build a better football team, and we're going to build that around you. But if you can't perform, we will move in a heartbeat. I think that's the Jarrett Stidham thing. I think they signed Jarrett Stidham to a 2-year, $10 million contract. I think one of the things you do is you go back into all the guys you've evaluated and say, man, we really like this kid coming out, and we think this kid's got potential. And we saw what he did last year, a start against the 49ers for the Raiders where he threw 3 touchdowns, and he was absolutely just absolutely throwing dime pieces all over the place. Like, that's a guy that maybe we can continue to develop, and if Russ doesn't work out, maybe we turn to that guy. Like, maybe that guy becomes by the way, he's handsome. I don't know if you've taken a good gander.
Is he Garoppolo-esque?
Well, Garoppolo is right now, and now that Brady's retired, Garoppolo is in a category unto himself. But Stidham is handsome,
and that seems to be very important to you. You put a lot of stock into that. It seems like.
Tell me one super handsome quarterback that hasn't been really good.
Oh, now you're going to have to make me think about Mark Sanchez. Although he had some success. Success. Aaron Rodgers. Is it obvious? Is this going to happen?
Alan, I thought you were thinking.
I was thinking of everybody out there, and I wanted to move on quickly.
Moved on from handsome. Yes. I was just trying to think, like Joe Montana. Would you consider him super handsome? Very, very good.
See, this happens a lot on our radio show, people. We get caught in the weeds here by Mark, and I try to bring it all back.
Arguably the most handsome quarterback ever to live, Tom Brady, 7 Super Bowls, into 10. I don't know. It's something to think about.
Yeah, something to think about, but not for long.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. It just seems like it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
Now Alan Lazard gets signed there as well. I mean, It just feels like they're greasing the skids, right? Greasing the skins with ghee butter.
Yes, right. They got the skids greased with ghee butter. From Aaron's butt crack. No, it doesn't. It does definitely feel. It does definitely. Jeez, what is this? Duck butter? I got a little leak. Yeah, it definitely feels like Aaron's going to the Jets.
Yeah,
I already started in on Packer fan, by the way.
Yes, boy,
dude,
folks. If you want a great entertainment, if you like, you got time to kill, you have your phone, just bury yourself into Mark Schler's Twitter timeline with Packer fans.
Oh my gosh, it's been because Packer fan. You make one statement about Aaron Rodgers coming to the Broncos
3 years ago,
and then all of a sudden, all the Packer fans, are on me, and so it's been good, clean fun. Just going after Packer fans.
Good, clean fun.
Yeah.
How many followers have you lost?
Oh, I don't know, close to 1,000 people quit following me.
So
that's okay.
Clearly, it was all in good fun for them as well, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well,
they weren't bothered by it at all.
Here's the problem: you get a bunch of people on social media. It's like social media to me is a lot like being in the locker room, except with a bunch of people who never played who think they played. Like that's the difference, right?
Yes.
And so when you spent your entire kind of adult life in a locker room, what happens? You learn to play that game. You learn to
kill or be killed.
Right. You learn to get after people a little bit. And so, I get after some fans that tend to get a little bit hurt feeling. Like their feelings get a little bit hurt. Like this big boy. Like, come in if you dare.
Well, we got a lot more stuff that's going to happen this week, and we'll be back later in the week to recap all of it.
It is all good. Always fun. Free agency is always fun. Leads you right into the draft. The NFL is a 365, 24-hour a day, 365 day a year beast.
It's a monster.
That has to be fed constantly.
You stole that from me, That's
that yours?
My line right there.
Well, if
so
you
at least
look,
give me credit.
If you look
once.
at the fine print of the contract.
Yeah, I know.
You are my intellectual property.
I know. But usually, at least the first time, you give me credit.
I may have said that to somebody passing and gave you credit, as far as you know.
All right, so now it's yours?
It came out of my mouth. It seems like it's mine.
All right.
Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinkin' Truth podcast.
Wise. He's so wise.
Such a sage. For everybody involved in the Stinkin' Truth podcast, we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much. And free agency continues to roll on. We'll be back with you later on in the week.